Okay, this is the next video in the DevNet series. We're learning some Python basics. We're using the book Python Crash Course 2nd edition by Eric Mathis to structure our learning. And in his book, in chapter 10, he introduces the concept of working with files. That means reading files and writing to files using Python. He also talks about exceptions, using a try except block in your code. So let's take a look at working with files in Python. So what we're going to do is, in the book, this is what he recommends. He has you download some text files to work with in the code. But I don't have those text files, so I created them myself. So I've got a file named py.txt here that just has py to this many places, and it's even got some spaces in here, some blank spaces. Then I've got another text file called frankenstein.txt with a quote from Frankenstein. And then I have my Python file that I'm going to work with called chapter10.py. And this is where I'll write my Python script. So the first thing is, how do we open up a file and read from the file using Python? It's actually pretty dang easy. So we'll say with open, and then we can put the name of the file we want to read right here between the parentheses after open. So we'll say with open py.txt, and I need to put those within single quotes or double quotes, and as, and then we could say a file object. So we're going to open it as a file object, or it gets opened as an object. And we could, you have the word here file underscore object, but we could have used anything. And in one of the examples, he just uses the letter F. So with open py.txt as F for file. But we'll stick with file object as the name of the object, of the file object that we're opening. So that's going to open our file object. And then what we can do is we could say, maybe have a variable called contents, and this is what he does in the book, and he makes it equal to the file object dot, and then he calls the read method. So we're going to read that file, we'll read the file object basically. So, okay, now contents, we're going to read the object and then we can print it out. Let's try it out. Print contents. Okay, so we open the file, we read the file into a variable, and then we print it out. Control B, and you can see it worked out. I'm using the Sublime text editor here in Linux Mint, which I installed in an earlier video. It's pretty handy because then I could just run the program and it'll show up down here at the bottom. All right, so, and then he does a couple of variations on reading files and writing to files. So the next one that he does is, he says, okay, this time, instead of hard coding the file name into the script here, let's just put it into a variable. So file name equals py.txt. Now this is still being hard coded. It's just we're going to add the variable into the open function here instead of just the string. So here now all we'll need to do is put in file name. And this enables us to then change whatever file it is we're opening really easily over here, and then it'll get passed in here to the open call right here. Okay, now in this next one, what he does is he says, let's use a for loop. And he says for each line in the file object, okay, for each line in the file object, and then we'll just print each line. So we'll indent that. And let's see here. Oh, I've got tabs here, so I've got to be consistent. So tab, tab. All right. Print, not contents, line. So for line in file object, we're going to print line. And we'll see what happens. So Control B. And you can see here that I've got an incorrect statement here. I know what it is. I've got a for loop here, and I didn't end it with a colon. There we go. Control B, and there's pi, but you can see here that as we print each line as we're looping through here, it added a blank line in between. So in the book, he points out that you can strip this out. So you could say dot rstrip and open and close parentheses, and we'll see if that works. Control B, and it strips out that white space. So now we still have, now we don't have that extra blank line in between as we loop through each line in our file and then print it out, but we do still have these blank spaces here that maybe we just want pi all in one line. And that would be pretty nice if we could have that. So to accommodate that, what he does is he says, okay, let's do it slightly differently. So we'll take this down here, and he says with open file name as file object, and he says lines equals the file object, but this time we're not going to use the read method, we'll use the dot read lines method. Read lines, like that. Okay, so lines, and I need an equal sign here. So instead of, so now this lines is a list or an array, and we make it equal to the file object read the lines into the array. So now we'll have an array called lines, and each element in our array will be a line of text from this file. So that should give us 3 items in our array. Now what we can do is we could loop through those items. So for line in our array, which is named lines, and then we could print each line, just like that. All right, let's do it. Control B, and you can see that it worked out here. However, we still have this white space. So then in the next, one of the solutions he does that for getting rid of each line and putting it all in one line is by creating a string and adding each line to a string. So he does something like this: pi underscore string equals an empty string. So now we have pi underscore string equals an empty string, and we're going to loop through those lines. But what we'll do is we will say pi string and then add on each one of those lines. Line dot, we'll say rstrip. Okay. And the rstrip's not going to work, so he's basically going to change it to strip the white space on both sides, not just rstrip on the right side, but on the but both the left and the right, by putting in just the strip method here. So pi string, and then add each line, strip out the white space, and at the end he's going to print pi string and also print the length of pi string. I believe that's what he does. Yep. All right. So file name, the variable, equals pi.txt. With open that file name as a file object. We make an array called lines, and we put each line, read the lines from the file object into that array. Now pi string is an empty string. We loop through each line in our lines array right here. Loop through each line in our lines array and add pi string to each line to pi string. Then we should have just one line. Let's test it out. We'll do Control B, and you can see there it is. All in one string on one line, and 32 characters. It's 32 characters long. So that looks pretty good. The next thing he does is pretty sweet. He manipulates a file that has pi, or he creates a file, or he works with a file which has pi to 1,000,000 places. Now, instead of just downloading the file from the book, you could easily create it yourself by opening up a bash terminal, and basically what you could do is you can first run a few commands here to get this pi to 1,000,000 places text file. So first of all, make sure you're online. Ping yahoo.com. I can ping Yahoo right here, as you can see. Then what we're going to do is you could run a sudo apt-get update to update your package repositories. You'll need to put in your password. So you'll do that. And then after you do that, you're going to install Python 3-pip. So we'll do a sudo apt-get install Python 3-pip. Now I've already installed it, so it'll tell me that I've already got it, which is great. So sudo apt-get install Python 3-pip. Then pip 3 install math-pi. Now, this is not what he does in the book. This is something that I did because I wanted to create a text file which has pi to 1,000,000 places. So I thought, why not just do it myself using Python? That makes sense, right? So to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to create a file. So we'll use nano. We'll create a file called create-pi.py. Create-pi.py. So nano, create-pi.py, and you can see I've already got it here, and here's the program. So you import math_pi, then using f, the variable f to stand for file, f equals open pi-million.txt and write it. So this will create the file on the fly. If you don't have a file in your folder named pi-million.txt, it'll write one for you. So it'll create that one. So we'll end up with this text file. Then file.write math_pi.py, and then in between parentheses put b equals and then 1,000,000, and then f.close. And this close needs to have, it should have an open and close parentheses like that. All right, excellent. So this should basically create a file named pi-million.txt and then write to that file pi to 1,000,000 places. So we'll do that. So we'll say Control X, Y, and enter, and then we'll run it. Python 3 create-pi.py, and that will create our file. We can do an ls command, and you can see that you have it right here. So now we have that file. Excellent. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go back to our Sublime text editor, and we can manipulate that file. So what we'll do is we'll say file name, and we'll change it to pi-million.txt. So now we're going to use a file that has pi to 1,000,000 places. Now, with open the file name as a file object, lines equals file object read lines. There's our pi string. Then for each line in our lines array, which basically now should have a lot of entries in it, we're going to create that pi string and add on each line, stripping out the white space. Then he does something pretty cool here. He says, all right, print an f string, but the f string will have pi string, and if you use brackets and a colon, you could say to like 52 places. So I think he does it that way. Yep, 52 places, ... so we don't see all 1,000,000. And then we want to also see the length of the pi string. And let's try this out. So this time we have our pi to 1,000,000 places. We're going to loop through it just like we did before. We have this pi string, which is a variable with an empty string. We add each line in our pi-million.txt line by line, and we'll do Control B, and you can see there it is to 52 places, and you can see that the total length of pi string is 1,000,002 places. Now, if we want to see the whole thing, we could just get rid of this and say pi string in between curly braces here and run it, and there it is to 1,000,000 places. So that's pretty cool. It's 1,000,002 places. So that was pretty fun. And then the other thing that he does is that he adds a search for your birthday into the program. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in there, and then you can type it in, but I'll copy and paste it in there. Okay, so here it is. He adds this to it. Birthday equals input, and then so we want some user input here. Enter your birthday in the form month, month, day, day, year, year. And then if birthday is in pi string, print your birthday appears in the first million digits of pi. Else print your birthday does not appear in the first million digits of pi. That's pretty cool. All right, so I'll hit File, Save. And since it wants user input, it's not going to work well here in the Sublime text editor. So we'll run it in the terminal in the bash shell. So let me clear my prompt history here, and then we'll say Python 3 chapter 10.py, and there's all the million characters of pi, and then at the bottom it says here, enter your birthday in the form month, month, day, day, year, year, and then I'll just pick something like 030388. And your birthday appears in the first million digits of pi. Although I have to tell you that it seems like every birthday appears. So I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure it actually works because I haven't seen it not work. So let's try another one here. We'll do it again, and we'll say 022233. And every time it appears. So I'm not 100% sure it works because it seems like, I guess that's what happens when you have a million characters. But anyway, pretty fun project, and working with files is pretty cool. Now, to try to get the exceptions, to try to work with exceptions, I'll show a couple examples. So here he uses a try except block, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So let's open up a new file. We'll use the Sublime text editor, File, New, and we're going to save it as, and we'll save it as chapter 10C. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, I'm just going to paste this in here. So try, this is a try except block. So the except will handle errors. And you can see here I've got a comment here, handling specific errors. So what we could do is we could say try this block of code, print 5 divided by 0. Now 5, you can't divide 5 by 0, so this would create an error. Then we can use the except here to look for 0 division error specifically. And if it sees a 0 division error, it will print you can't divide by 0. So we'll try it. Control B, and you can see here it says you can't divide by 0. So that worked perfectly. Another example that he uses is getting an error and working with the error when the file isn't found. I'll show an example. And this is what he uses in the book. So the example is this. File name equals alice.txt. And let's say for some reason there's no file named alice.txt, or you put the wrong file path to alex.txt, and you put files, and it's not in this file path. Okay, so try with open file name. Notice he puts the encoding standard here, the encoding UTF-8 as F. So instead of file object, it just says F for file. So the object is F here. And then contents equals f.read. Now I'm going to need to, let's see here, I'm going to need to indent this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we'll just make it look like that so it's a little bit easier to see. So try, we'll do a with, right? A with loop here. So open this, I'm sorry, not a with loop. So using a with, we're going to open the file as F. We're going to read it to contents. Okay, now the exception is looking for the file not found error. Obviously, I don't have a file named alice.txt, so it should say that this doesn't exist. So I'll do a Control B here, and you can see, sorry, the file ./files alice.txt does not exist. But what if I put in here Frankenstein.txt, and I have that file right here, Frankenstein.txt, and we could read the contents, and then we could do try except, and this time I'll put down here else print contents. All right, let's see if that works. And do Control B, and you can see that it tried opening the file, putting the file into the variable contents. It found the file, so the exception, there's no error, so we don't run the file not found error, and then else here, we just print the contents out. So this is trying to account for a possible error. And notice here, if I put // and some text here and run it again, we should get Control B, sorry, the file does not exist, because it's the wrong path to the file. But if I just put a // we'll see if that works. Ta-da, it worked. Anyway, pretty fun stuff. Chapter 10, working with files, learning about exceptions. The book has many more examples to work with, so go get the book and work through the examples, work through the exercises. It's pretty fun.